Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Nicholson, and I'm with PayrollForConstruction.com. Today, I'm going to walk you through an educational webinar on the top payroll issues that keep contractors up at night. So today is, again, just going to be more education focused. We won't really be diving into our service here today. Today is really just more so for me to take a second and just mention to you, hey, here are some situations that contractors deal with on a week-to-week basis with their payroll that can really cause a lot of issues, a lot of manual, tracking and reporting involved if you don't use a service like ours. So, I'm just going to focus in on those things here today, and I won't really be diving into the actual payroll service itself. Of course, if anybody's interested in a live one-on-one demonstration where I can actually show you the program and how we tackle these issues so well, I'll pull my information up on the screen at the end so you can shoot me an email or give me a call with any questions or anything like that. And of course, I will have a section at the end here, where you'll be, have a chance to answer or ask some questions there in the little box on the webinar. So before I dive in here, just want to take a second and just thank everyone again for, taking the time to attend the webinar here today. And, let's just go ahead and dive right into it here. So the very first thing on this slide here to talk about is just going to be some of these details that are involved with construction payroll. If you're just, a basic, office company, and you're not working out in the field, a lot of these issues don't apply to those types of companies. So, they'll do just fine using a service that doesn't have these construction specific features. However, when you're working as a contractor, a lot of times if you're working in multiple states, or even if you're working in a state like Ohio or Kentucky, for example, where there's multiple localities, tracking those types of things in a system that's just not designed to track that can really add a lot of time to your payroll processing, because you're having to manually change on the time card, what state that the guy was working in or what city needs to be withheld for those hours. So the really nice thing about our system is we automate all of those things. And the way we're able to automate it really just starts with job tracking. A lot of payroll services out there, they just aren't able to control things on a job by job basis. They want you to go in and go to each individual employee to say, hey, he's part of this tax group or this tax state. He needs this pay rate or these fringes or this workers' comp. So there's a lot of things that they want you to drive on a per employee basis where, as a contractor, those things might change by job, not just the taxes, but also things like pay rate, especially if you're a prevailing wage contractor, maybe you're non-union, or if you're union, if you work on any of these, prevailing wage certified payroll type jobs where, those rates could change based on, what kind of work they're doing, or even just from job to job. Hey, job A requires this rate, job B requires another rate. That's something that a lot of services really don't offer. And just, again, manual changes that you would have to worry about as far as making sure when you enter that time in that you manually adjust that pay rate. Whereas with a system like ours, you just tie that time to the job and it automatically knows, hey, because this is the job on the time, I already know what state, what locality, what pay rate needs to be assigned to that person. So that's really what makes us different than a lot of services out there, is just that job functionality where we can drive, everything on the screen here essentially on a job by job basis. So another thing, talking about changing the pay rates by job is going to be the fringe calculations. So maybe you're a union contractor and you have like home away logic where, hey, my guy's normally part of local one, but when he goes and works in this job in this other state or this other, part of town or whatever, maybe you have to submit a portion of his benefits or all of his benefits to, local 7, a different union for that jurisdiction. So that's something that our system does a really good job of automating, so that, again, you're not having to run Excel spreadsheets on your end or track any of those calculations manually. And to kind of go a little bit further here, if you're a non-union contractor, a lot of contractors don't know this, but you can actually do a fringe credit or a fringe reduction factor for benefits that you already provide for the employee. So let's say that maybe, when he works on this special government job, he needs to have, normally he's $15 an hour as his pay rate, but he needs to go up to $20 an hour for the pay rate and $10 an hour for the fringe rate. A lot of contractors out there will just pay him that $10 an hour fringe rate as just, cash into his paycheck at the end of the week. Whereas, if you have a system like ours, you can actually take that credit for maybe a 401k match that you do, or a health insurance contribution, or even vacation time that you provide for the employee. Those are all things that you can enter in our system, and it will automatically say, hey, because this employee has these benefits, we can actually take that $10 an hour fringe and we can reduce it down to just $7.50 an hour, and then you're saving, that additional burden on the tax part of it. So that's something that our system does that saves a lot of our clients money, is that fringe credit portion that, again, a lot of contractors, maybe they do provide benefits for the employees, but they just don't take advantage of the credit because they don't have a payroll system that's geared to handle it, and they're not willing to spend, hours upon hours tracking those and manually entering fringe rates, based on calculations they're doing by hand. So that's something that can really benefit you and help save you a lot of money on those prevailing wage jobs, is taking advantage of the fringe credit. Another thing that our system does very well is the workers' comp tracking. So whether maybe your workers' comp, changes by job, maybe, hey, when we work in this job, we need to report it to this state's policy. We work in a different job, it goes to the other state's policy. So if you're doing it like that, obviously, like I said before, the job tracking in our system allows us to, control things like the workers' comp by job. But even, maybe you're a roofing contractor, and hey, when he's on a 3-story roof versus a 2-story versus a 1-story, maybe there's separate workers' comp rates for that. Or even I've seen, like with electrical contractors, hey, when he's high voltage, he's this workers' comp rate. When he's low voltage, he's that workers' comp rate. So in a situation where, maybe it's the job, or maybe it's the actual work that he's doing on the job that changes that workers' comp rate, a lot of systems out there aren't able to do that because they just want you to say, hey, that employee is just this one workers' comp code, and they don't allow you to change it. Whereas with ours, you can actually change that, on an hour by hour basis, depending on, if it needs to. So another thing I want to mention here is going to be that paper tracking entry, getting the time cards back from the field. Some companies still do the manual entry of pen and paper, timesheets once they collect them from the field. Other contractors might use a mobile app. So they might have the guys enter it in there, then they import it over. So, that can really, the front end of the payroll, collecting the time can really be time consuming as well. So that's why we offer a mobile application where the guys can just go in, enter in their time, and then, once everything is entered, you're not having to re-enter it into the system and type in pay rates and all this stuff. Literally, you just upload that time from our mobile app, or we even integrate with many construction-specific, field management softwares out in the world. So, you import the time from our app or from any app, and then our system is driving, all these things that we're looking at here automatically instead of you, having to manually do that. The next thing I want to go into here is going to be the reporting that comes after payroll's processed. If you were to, ask a contractor that experienced any of those things on that last slide, hey, what is the hardest part about your payroll? A lot of times they aren't going to say, yeah, it's paying the employees and the taxes. What they'll really tell you is they'll say, it's the certified payrolls that I have to do, by hand once the payroll company's already paid out to all the employees. So that's where services like ours really are different from others, in the fact that we're not just streamlining that beginning part of the payroll. Yeah, it's great that we're helping with all those calculations, but we're also, taking you to the finish line and getting you these reports that, you're going to need once the payroll's processed. Now, when it comes to things like certified payroll, it's become a real generic term nowadays. When you say certified payroll, are you just talking about, a generic form or the federal form? A lot of times there's, state and even local forms out there that might be required of you, to turn in on those special formats. So when you're, talking to any vendor, whether it's us or any payroll service out there, you really want to make sure you get specific when you get into the topic of certified payroll, because, some companies will just say, hey, we have this one format, and then you're having to take that form, with the numbers on it and retype it into another form, not really solving your issue. You're still, having to do that manual work, even if they do claim, hey, we can provide you a certified payroll form. Another aspect of certified payroll that's becoming more and more common nowadays is going to be the electronic side of it. So if you use an LCP tracker to, maybe you take that paper form and you type it into the LCP tracker website. With our service, you wouldn't even have to actually do that. We actually provide a file that you can just upload right into there, whether it's LCP tracker, EMARS, California DIR, New York School Construction Authority. There's a lot of online certified payroll formats out there nowadays. So those are all formats that our system's able to handle, track for you, and then you can just upload the data without having to manually do any, keying into their websites yourself. So with certified payroll, again, you want to ask, is the payroll company doing the certified payroll, or is there another, outside company that is doing it, and it's a third party that's going to have extra fees associated and things like that. So, with us, everything's all included. With the service, you're not going to be bounced back and forth between two companies or anything like that. Minority compliance, EEO reporting is all going to be in there if you need it. Another, big thing with contractors is tracking the job labor. Our system, again, because I mentioned it on the last slide, you can enter in the hours by job. So going in there and getting a job report to see how many hours did we have? What do we pay to the guys in earnings? What do we pay in taxes, in union fringes, in workers' compensation? There's all these other expenses aside from what you actually, pay into the employee's paycheck that also affects the cost of these projects. So, you don't just want to use a payroll service that's going to say, even if they can track the jobs, you don't want them to just say, okay, the hours times the pay rate, that's your job costing. You want them to really get into the nuts and bolts of, what about my workers' comp cost? What about my match to my 401k or my health insurance contributions? Are those being job costed as well? I mentioned earlier with the union fringes, if you're a union contractor, that is very, very important because a lot of times, the union fringes is going to be a very big bulk of your expenses for the payroll. So having a system that can do, not just job labor costing, but also burden costing, where it's also, allocating those more overhead type expenses to these jobs is going to be very important for you. For things like workers' comp, whether you're just going in to make a payment to the workers' comp company, we provide reports for that where it's just real easy to get that number. Or, maybe you're going through the audit once a year and the auditor wants to know, hey, what are the limits and things like that. Our system is very good at, having both types of reports, a summary report just for making the payment, and then a detailed report which breaks out, hey, here are the employees that work in that class, here are the types of earnings that they received, so that, if you are tracking your workers' comp and maybe there's things like bonuses or overtime that don't need to, affect what you pay in workers' comp, our system can, not only filter those things out for you, but also give you a nice, easy report to, prove to the auditor, hey, we did pay you the correct number, and here's exactly how we came to that number. So, workers' comp reporting is going to be, very smooth with us. And then, when it comes to things like 401k or child support, those are just very simple. You go in there. We actually can pay the child support for you. But if you need to see, hey, did we pay this guy's child support this week? There's an easy report in there to go and run it. Union reports is also going to be another area. When it comes to paying the union, you don't want to have to track that thing, those types of benefits and deductions and all that outside of your payroll system on spreadsheets. It just, increases the amount of time that you're spending playing around with numbers and doing calculations. So in our system, we set up the deductions, fringes, everything for the union in the background so that all you have to do is log in, click the report, and it's going to tell you, hey, you had this many people in this union, here's all their individual benefits listed, and then it's also going to tell you, hey, here's that bottom line number that you have to pay that union. And if you have multiple unions, that's no problem at all. So we definitely do a good job with the union report side of it. No matter how many you have, there's no limit. All right. So with those things being mentioned up front here, I do not want to lose the fact that, we're just like any other payroll service out there. We're still going to be paying the employees by check or direct deposit. We're still handling paying your taxes so that you're not having to worry about that. And, miss making a payment. A lot of times if you're having to, track those things manually that I mentioned in the first two slides there, you're going to have issues with, making sure that you make that tax payment on Friday when it needs to go through. If you're too worried on Friday about getting your union report or getting your workers' comp report for the audit, sometimes that, making that payment online to the IRS can kind of slip your mind. You end up paying it on the following Monday. You're paying extra fees and things like that. So just having the convenience of knowing they're going to take care of my taxes. I don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to have any fees for paying it late because I know that, my service took care of that. Of course, we're going to do the quarterly and annual tax filings for you, W-2s, other year-end services like, the Affordable Care Act, 1095, 1095C forms, we'll handle for you as well if you need those. So just like any other payroll service out there, we are absolutely going to take care of, these normal items. Another thing I like to mention, since we're talking about contractors specifically, is layoff checks or even just like severance pay. Sometimes you'll have it where, if you're a union guy or a union company especially, you have a guy, you laid him off today, and now you need to give him a check by the end of his shift today of, everything that he's owed, those outstanding hours. So in our system, it's really easy to go in there, enter the hours in, and then you can just cut a layoff check right away. You just click a compute button, basically. It's going to tell you the net pay, and then you're able to just handwrite a check or print it right out of the system. So another thing that's not listed here that we do a real good job of, which isn't really traditional, it's more traditional for contractors than, just payroll in general. But yeah, an on-the-spot layoff check is also something that we're going to do a good job of making sure that you guys can do those, outside of your normal pay week. Now, what are some things that you can do to make these issues less difficult on yourself? The first thing is just make sure that you're working with vendors that understand issues specific to your industry. So when you're talking to different vendors out there, a lot of times asking them, okay, I know you do payroll. Do you have any, other contractors, that also use your service that maybe we could talk to? With us, every single one of our clients is a contractor. They're all construction. Maybe they're union, maybe they're non-union, maybe they do prevailing wage, maybe they don't. But yeah, every single one of our clients is going to be, a construction contractor who needs the types of things that, I mentioned here at the beginning of this, asking for, not just, hey, do you have contractors, but do you have electrical contractors or whatever industry that you guys are in? Because a lot of times they might just say, hey, we have this one person you can talk to, but if you ask for someone, more specific in your industry, that list, shrinks from 1 to 0 pretty quick. So, asking to, talk to contractors that are in, your industry, even in your area that they work with, and, make sure that they have the types of things that you're going to need. Make sure, if you're a union contractor, ask to see, hey, do you have any union contractors that you work with that you do those reports for? So these are just things that you want to ask about up front, because the worst thing that you can do to yourself is sign up for a service. They say, oh yeah, we can do all those reports for you. You go live, you go through all the training, and then once you reach that finish line, you're sitting there scratching your head like, where's this report? Where's that report? So, these are the types of issues that if you ask about upfront in the process, you can just really, save yourself some headache later down the road. Making sure your whole team is involved is another way to make sure that a service is meeting all of your needs. Maybe you find a service that's really good at the certified payrolls or, really good at the workers' compensation, but if you don't have, let's say, maybe a project manager involved, maybe they weren't there to ask about job cost reporting and making sure that you can get, accurate numbers when it comes to that. That's why it's important to have, anybody who's involved with the payroll involved with the, the kind of searching process and the research here, because we just want to make sure that everybody on the team is getting, what they're looking for. So, obviously not the entire office, but anybody who's involved with the payroll, even like owners, people who are going to be looking at the reports at the end of the day, are definitely good people to get involved with the research process. And the best way to, see a payroll service in action is through a live demonstration. Here at Payroll for Construction, we do live demonstrations for every single one of our clients before they sign up, because we are very upfront about making sure you are a good fit for the service before you sign on. So a lot of, other systems or, services out there, they'll just sign you up. they'll, get a bunch of employee information from you. They'll get you live in 2 weeks. And then, as I said earlier, you're struggling to get workers' comp, certified union reports, job costing, all those things I mentioned earlier. So doing live demonstrations where you're able to ask upfront, hey, can you show me this report? How do you handle these types of reports is really good because you're just able to get those questions out and, basically make them prove to you, hey, this is exactly how we're going to handle this reporting for you. You definitely want to make sure that you're using a service or a software that doesn't require any manual updates. So we do all the taxing updates for you so that you're not having to worry about that types of things. Even when it comes to like union benefits, when the union notifies you, you just send it over to us. We take care of getting those, new rates in the system for you. So, you really don't want to have to manually make those changes yourself because, again, that's going to be a very time-consuming part of the process. And like we talked about earlier, compliance reporting, if they can just give you the information, but they can't put it on the specific form that you need, you're still, again, taking that, time that you could just spend, doing other things to help the business. And, now you're taking it and just doing redundant work. So having a system that not only can get you the compliance report that you need, but can get it on the right format that you need so that you're not spending time transferring numbers from one form to another, week after week after week once you're up and running. I'd say probably the biggest thing that you can take away from this presentation today is making sure you use a service that can track time by job. If you're a contractor, having those job cost numbers is very important to make sure that you're, staying profitable on these jobs. So, with that being said, maybe you're tracking it on a job by job basis, but maybe you want to get a little bit more detailed. Maybe you break your jobs up into phases or, even cost codes where you want to say, hey, what parts of this job are we doing well? I know we did well on the job itself, but, what are the tasks on that job that we really excelled at that, made it go so well? So that's where, not only can we track it by job, we can also track it in further details of, what tasks are these guys doing on the job. That way you can really, get those finer details on reports. And as a project manager, you're not just saying, hey, this is how much we spent on the job, but you're saying, here's what we spent on this task on the job versus another task. So it really just gives you, more numbers to play with, from like a project management perspective. And then, not just for the job costing is that important, but also like we talked about earlier with changing the rates by job, the taxes, the workers' compensation. There's so many things that can change on a job by job basis where if you're using a service that just doesn't even have jobs at all, that's one big indicator that, you're going to be spending a lot of time manually making adjustments on the payroll. And, working with mobile applications, again, that can be another time-consuming part is if you're just doing pen and paper time cards and you're using a service that just doesn't support mobile, whether, maybe they don't have their own app or they can't even work with any other apps, that can really, you can spend a lot of time collecting the time from the field, typing it into the service. So, ideally you'd want to work with a service out there that can work with a mobile application where the guys are entering it in out in the field. Maybe there's an approval process in there where a project manager is looking over that time, before it's submitted into you guys over in the office. It's just going to be a big time saver to not have to key in that time yourself. So, you definitely want to use a service like ours that's compatible with mobile applications so that you can really get rid of that, time-consuming part on the front end. I spent a lot of time in the webinar today talking about those compliance reports and, things after the payroll's done that can be time consuming. But of course, pen and paper timesheets are also pretty time consuming as well. So getting rid of those, some companies can do it really well. And some companies, maybe you've got older guys out in the field or just guys that aren't so great with technology. This is a thing where some companies can do it, some companies can't. It just really depends on, your field staff. I don't know who you have out in the field, but that is, another piece that can really save you some time is getting rid of that paper time cards. All right, so I do want to pull up my information here. Again, my name is Andrew Nicholson. I'm a sales representative here at Payroll for Construction. So if you have any questions whatsoever about our service, or maybe you just have, maybe you just want pricing or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. Give me a call at the number there, or just shoot me an email with any questions you might have, and I'll be here to help. I will open it up for questions here on the meeting as well. So if you just want to send me a quick email here, feel free to do that. But there also is a spot in the GoToMeeting here where you can type in some questions. So if anybody has questions, feel free to type in the chat there, and I will be happy to address those. All right. Looking like we don't have any questions here. Again, no rush. If you think of a question later down the road, feel free to, take a picture of my information there. Also keep an eye on your inbox. We will, send out a recording of this out to everybody after the fact. So if you want to take a look at any of the other slides, from the beginning, feel free to do that. But again, thank you everyone for attending the webinar here today, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.